Greetings and welcome from the Windrush Caribbean Film Festival. A big thank you to our sponsors and partners who've made tonight possible, and a very warm welcome to our attendees from YouTube and Facebook. Now, in order to watch the film and participate in the discussion, please put your comments in the comment section on Facebook and subscribe and log in to Caribbean Tales. Caribbean Tales TV. Now, prior to the screening of our feature documentary, Remembering the Revolution, oh yes, please do that prior to sorry, I think I missed it. But yes, the actual documentary itself is a very poignant experience about the revolution that took place from 1968 to 1970 in Trinidad, which had its was sort of like had its roots in some of the experiences that happened in Canada at the time. So now we're going to show the trailer, so do have a look at that and enjoy. Thank you.
They were bearing. Oh Lord, I never see so much crowd and everybody singing along. And when the singing was power in the hands of the people now.
Everybody who is 40 years old, they know nothing about this business.
So I'd like to introduce my panelists. Welcome. Ansel Wong and Charmaine Simpson. I'll just tell you a little bit about both of these wonderful speakers. Firstly, Ansel migrated from the Trinidad and Tobago in 1965 to attend university in the UK. From then till now, he has had an extensive engagement with Black communities in British society as a component, an advocate, and a beneficiary. He's been a student revolutionary, a local magistrate, an artist, a contributor to government's policies and projects, and a diversity consultant. He's currently trustee of the Carnival Village Trust and vice principal of the Savile Row Academy. Charmaine Simpson has over 10 years experience of working in both public and voluntary sector, both at local and national levels. She's an experienced social worker. In 2007, Charmaine founded Black History Studies with her husband, Mark Simpson, providing courses on a range of subjects for the local community to learn about their African history. Charmaine is also passionate about personal finance, and she coaches and educates and provides consultation and classes for all ages. She is a keen researcher in history. She's a lover of African print clothing and a wife of over 13 years and mother to 3 daughters. So welcome, both of you. Hi. Now, hi. I don't want to obviously spoil the film for everybody. I mean, we know that this is an incredibly important film in terms of Trinidad's history and how that actually hooks into revolutions that were happening all over the world during the late 60s and early 70s. But Ansel, I wanted to ask you, seeing as you were actually in the UK at that time, just how important was the revolution to you while you were actually here in university studying in the UK? How were you receiving that?
Thank you, Yvonne. I must apologize at first because I'm in the middle of a thunderstorm in London. So if you hear thunder and rain and so on in the background, apologies. But I had arrived in the UK about 5 years after 1970. Very much a freshwater Trinidadian, enjoying London, having expectations, but also drawing from what went on in the 1970, the strength of having experience, having acknowledged, having witnessed the struggles of people in Trinidad to push against the barriers of discrimination. And I just felt very comfortable in my own skin in London to draw on that experience to help me to combat what I was actually receiving while I was a student in London.
And so obviously that clearly impacted you quite heavily. Do you think that looking back on that experience of the revolution, that we've actually had a better experience here in the UK and in Trinidad as a result of it?
Looking back in retrospect is always a good thing, and I sense to what extent perhaps a topical aspect of it in light of the election results that happened a few days ago. And the most disturbing aspect is the response that we are getting in relation to levels of racism and levels of responses from within people in Trinidad and Tobago, which in a sense helped me to begin to think we have struggled against that in 1970. What has happened now in 2020 is very much a reflection of what happened in 1970. So it is disturbing from that particular aspect. But nevertheless, it is still part and parcel of the struggles that we have in now contemporary, like the Black Lives Matter, like the struggles we are having around issues in terms of young people and their development.
And talking of young people, Charmaine, you've been working with young people now in the community at grassroots level for a very, very long time, more than 10 years. How important is it for them to know about a revolution such as this, revolutions that take place in places like Trinidad? And how important is it for young people to know about it?
I think it's very important that young people know about movements and revolutions that happened in the past, because it's showing them that our parents and people of their and grandparents' age have fought for change that they're benefiting from today. So, for example, I did a workshop with some young people looking at the history of the protest song and using music and song to talk about revolutions and how people have fought for change through music. So that's going to be inspiring young people. If they feel that there's an area in the community, an area that they're unhappy with, they can use their voice to speak out and mobilize with other young people and form a union to actually get change. And this is one of the reasons why I love this film, and I showed it before, because it does inspire us who are coming from Caribbean heritage, that various different groups around the world were coming together and taking action. And it was showing young people, students coming together and taking action. So it's showing to them that if you want to see change in your community and in change in your society, come together and work with other people that's got a similar outlook in life, and actually work together and actually bring your voice to the people that need to hear, and actually that will help towards making change. It may not happen right away, but your voice might be able to contribute to that wider movement. So it's very important.
And do you think that the kind of relationship that young people, for example, Ansel, in the Caribbean, do they have a very similar connection or relationship with Caribbeans in the UK? I mean, in fact, that's actually a question for both of you, really.
I think at the time, for me, all movement within the United Kingdom and with London was a movement that tried to mimic and follow what was happening in the United States. Everything related to that, all our reference points, all political action was related to that. And therefore, it was a kind of refreshing opportunity to look back at Trinidad and what was happening in Trinidad, because that became a different reference points in terms of our political agitation and activism, to be able to see young people in the country where we came from being involved in struggle. So I drew strength personally. I drew strength from that. So I don't necessarily have to begin to acknowledge and keep genuflecting to the Black Panthers and to people what was happening in USA. But we had a genuine engagement with Trinidad and Tobago.
Which is really fantastic. Is that something that still happens now with young people, Charmaine? Do you feel that they are connecting with the Caribbean and the United States and Africa when it comes to, important moments like this?
Oh yes, because I could speak about myself. So my parents came from Jamaica, and
Mm-hmm.
came over here, and I've been learning about various movements that are happening in Jamaica, movements that have been inspired by the whole of the Caribbean. So not just Jamaica, the whole of the Caribbean. Even though people think that we're very divided, we have come together, and a lot of the people that I speak about in my courses and presentations and film screenings have come from the Caribbean. You have revolutionary leaders such as Louis Farrakhan with Caribbean roots, Kwame Ture, who's instrumental in the civil rights movement. You have various people that were involved in the Black Panther Party with Caribbean roots, and we're seeing how these people revolutionized in America, but also had impact on what was going on over here. We had our own revolutionary movements in England, but we don't really speak about that. So what I try to do is highlight the different movements that we have in this country and inspire young people to say, you know what, we can actually make change. Black Lives Matters has been going on in this country for a very long time. This is not a recent phenomenon.
Yes.
We have been campaigning for a very long time. So even to bringing in people such as Claudia Jones, people like Olive Morris, these are the people that we need to talk about. And even speaking about the women that were involved in these movements, because we often assume that these movements were very male dominated, but women had an amazing part and contributions to play in these movements as well. I've actually written a whole course about females and contribution, or women contribution to history, and to highlight all these amazing people in our history and how we work together on the battlefield to bring change.
And Ansel, are there any particular moments in the revolution in Trinidad when women were very much at the forefront that you can remember?
I had very little direct experience of the actual activism from 65 to 70, and we only got involved in London through our own community activism to raise money for the defense of the soldiers and the families of the soldiers, and also around the issues of discrimination and disadvantage suffered by the community. And the third element was the opportunity that existed for communities to come together, the African community and the Indian community. And that's something that we had replicated already in the United Kingdom, the opportunity to which we took the concept of blackness in a political context that had a home for everybody, both people of Caribbean origin, people of African origin, and people of Asian origin. And the opportunity that exists for engagement with people like the Indian Workers Association, the Black Liberation Front, and different other elements of struggle in the United Kingdom. So we learned from that experience in Trinidad, the attempt to bring about unity between the two communities. And that is one of a feature of the revolution that I think I resonated with.
Okay, lovely. And can you just give us a sort of taste of how you were involved in activism in the 60s, and so just to give us an idea of what you would have been doing if we were able to turn back turn back time? What would we be seeing the young Afro-haired Ansel involved in?
I think my coming to the United Kingdom was very much based on an understanding of what we learned about what happens in England. Remember, in my generation, it's not like Charmin who was born here. We came with an expectation that we are coming to the mother country, and therefore we're going to be readily received. And I can share this little one incident, which I think gives you an insight into how that expectation was severely shattered. Coming to university for the first time, straight from Trinidad, and we came to the university. I went to the University of Hull in Yorkshire.
Right.
And
Okay.
the British Council in Yorkshire had an integration induction program for us as foreign students. And the first day of that integration and that induction was to show us a toilet and how to flush a toilet. So we spent time standing outside looking and the tutor showing us how we should pull the chain to flush the toilet. And of course, there were all 4 Trinidadians among us, and we thought it was great fun to the extent that we pretended that we have never seen flush toilets before. And we took it to its natural conclusion. And then he took us to the table to show us again the settings of knives and forks and how to use it. So our expectation, our illusion, Donald Hines referred to it as journey to an illusion. It was a nightmare, not an illusion, because we were seen and treated differently. So experience prepared me for struggle, for engagement, and to make sure that these things don't happen. And that's how I started.
So it's almost as though you came to England to return to ground zero in terms of, you know, how you were perceived as a young intellectual, if you like. Charmaine, how would you say things have changed since then? I mean, how are university students being received now when they go to university, and what changes have happened that you noticed with your students?
Yeah. So, for example, I went to university in this country. I got a degree in economics. I actually worked for a university, and I was actually working in the Rights and Advice Center of the university. And we often saw discrimination, racism on campus, and it still does exist. Students being treated differently, racism having been ignored on campus, and there's still a movement. So in the university that I worked for, there was a lot of activism that was going on by the students on campus about exposing things like eugenics, exposing elements of like discrimination amongst people who have been in the organization for years but never progressed to different levels. How come there's only certain amount of black or I hate the word ethnic minority, or just say black staff working in various levels in the organization, and how come people are not progressing in their chosen careers? So it's still happening. It's still happening in university, depending on where you are. It's not as blatant as it was before. It's done covertly, but people are actually still campaigning and highlighting what's going on in this university system. And even the students as well, some of them not being taught how to flush toilets in the extreme example like Ansel, but there's still discrimination that they feel when they go to university and they're not reflected in the curriculum. Their history is not spoken about. If you're going to university to learn about African history, but African history is not being taught, or certain elements are not taught in their history or not spoken about, certain things neglected, not put in the curriculum. So a lot of people are speaking out against these things, decolonizing the curriculum, not just having other put into okay, we're only going to look at this part of our history or this part of the story because it's an other, or it's in Black History Month. This should be incorporated throughout the curriculum because we have been there. So if we're talking about Tudors, we should be talking about that we were there, not doing a section on Black Tudors like we weren't there. Like, oh, then you got Tudors and then you got the other Tudors. No, we can talk about us as intermingling and working together during that time because we existed, and it's highlighting that we have been in this country for a long time and we're not going anywhere. So it's all about educating people about that and doing it in a way that everybody should learn about our history and our story, because basically Black history and Caribbean history is British history, but oftentimes it's being neglected, and we need to change that. And that's going to come through us, like Ansel and ourselves, to spearhead that.
So
I think I also think that's an important point in terms of the education and the upbringing. And I think what the film will show as well, people certainly of my generation, was the development of educational understanding and understanding of your history, which was very much something that emboldened me, because I grew up listening to the politicians post-independence. Eric Williams, our prime minister, he was a fantastic orator, and he stood for everything that we anticipated and wanted. The opportunity to have a Black prime minister, the opportunity to be able to see him committing himself. And when he spoke about the fact that Massa Day done, for me, before I left Trinidad, that resonated with me. And the second most important thing he did for us and all of other people who participated in that revolution was this concept that he said, we have Mother Trinidad. There is no Mother India and there's no Mother Africa, Mother Trinidad. And he rooted his political development very much in that. So the sense of disappointment that we felt that didn't materialize, and that the students at the university, which then was precipitated by the situation at the university in Canada. And we had connections with that, so I was involved with aspects of that, raising money for the students in Canada, and also trying to take part of that activism into the United Kingdom so that we get our young people to understand that history and the connections that we have with Trinidad and Canada.
Fantastic. Charmaine, can I just ask you I mean, you've been an activist for a very long time now, but what was it that actually sparked off activism in you? What made you take that journey? In that journey?
It's from my love of reading. So my dad, bless his cotton socks, he born in Jamaica, came over here when he was in about 10, 11, and he always instilled the love of learning. So he used to make us we used to go to Eden Road Library every Friday and get 5 books. And those are the 5 books that we used to read every week until the next week when we changed it over. So he's always getting to read. And then because he was a musician, he used to play lots of reggae music in the house. And he had lots of Rastafarian friends that used to come around and reason. And I was one of those children that when big people are talking, I'm always want to be in the mix and listening to what they're saying. So I'm picking up what they're saying. And then I fell in love with Maxi Priest because I was obsessed with locks and hair and the whole Rastafari movement. And that got me onto the journey of reading. And then what really got me into being an activist was learning about my history and learning how great our history is, how amazing our story is. And learning about your history, there's so much to learn. It's like you learn one area and you go into another area. And that's what got me into the road of being an activist and being an education activist and telling people that we have amazing story to tell. Our history is being suppressed. There's reasons behind that. We need to forget they're oppressing our history, and we need to take responsibility from learning our history and speaking to our elders and learning about our great history, not just in the Americas, because they like to focus on America a lot. What was our story over here? What did our grandparents do? What did our uncle and aunties? And then we look at what did the community base do? And then we look at further into the community. So I think learning my history, and I think also what radicalized me as well, or got me into my activism, is when I learned about the assassination of Patrice Lumumba and what they did to him. And that was me coming to a film festival like this, at BFI in South Bank, and watching a film called African Odyssey, made in America, and watching this film and learning what they did to Patrice Lumumba, and actually sparking myself, learning what they did to him, and going, I'm going to do some research on what happened to him. And that got me into that journey of learning about our history and how our history is linked. And that history continues to this day, because we're still seeing a legacy of that incident in history to this day, and how that affected a lot of movements as well. So it's just learning my history and being around amazing elders that were able to guide me in my learning, and just being a good listener. And that's what got me into my journey of activism. So Black elders matter. It is so important that our elders actually have, and feel that our elders don't feel that we as young people are not willing to listen, because we are listening. It's just that we just have to do it in a different way. We have to sit down with our young people and talk about our stories, and our family stories and traditions are so amazing. We need to just keep sharing these things, because our young people will listen. If one doesn't listen, somebody else will listen and take it up. And we need to have a next generation of historians that keep this history alive and share this with people using the technologies that we have now. So yes, that's my journey, and still on my journey.
Well, that's absolutely amazing. I think it's time for us to wind up this discussion now. So I want to thank you very, very much indeed to Ansel Wan and Charmaine Simpson. Thank you so much for discussing the activism and preceding the film Remembering Revolution, which is going to start shortly. I think we're going to close this element down now. All right. Okay. Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye.
Okay, bye
Bye.
bye, bye, bye
Bye
bye.
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 Great. So just to close things down and just to remind everybody that tickets and passes are on sale online for future events. To please check out our website, www.windrushfilmfestival.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Please tell all your friends to join us. And now we are going to start our film, Remembering Revolution. Do enjoy and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
The song that you hear